Hey guys, as part of my year reading for 2021, I'm going to be talking about The Romanov Prophecy by Steve Berry. In The Romanov Prophecy by Steve Berry, American lawyer Miles Lord is in Moscow for a momentous event. Communism has fallen, and the Russian people have decided they want to bring back the monarchy. Miles and his business partner are in Russia to speak for Western interests, and it's up to Miles to uncover anything that might be unsavory about the leading candidate who will become the new Tsar. Miles ends up uncovering more than he bargained for, and comes to discover that a direct heir of Nicholas II may be out there. Miles has unraveled a deep conspiracy and is now the target of those who want things to go their way. On the run, Miles is joined by a circus performer named Akalina, and together they go on a globe-trotting treasure hunt, hoping to find a true Romanov heir at the end of their journey. So, as I mentioned, The Romanov Prophecy by Steve Berry is part of my year of rereading that I have been doing this year in the year of 2021. The last time I read this book was definitely way over a decade ago, and let's just say a lot has happened since this book was published and the last time I read it. Like I said, it's been a good decade since I last read this book, and just a lot of new things have kind of come to light about the Romanovs, if you will. And if you've been watching my year of rereading videos, I have typically been kind of going over like a format that I give you guys like my 5 favorite things that I love about the book that I'm rereading. But for this particular book, because this is dealing with the Romanov family, their execution, and, this whole theory and idea and speculation. Well, what if there's some Romanov survivors out there? Because of that, I'm going to be kind of doing this video differently, and it's almost going to kind of be more like a standard book review that I do, because I feel the need to kind of go over some stuff, like historical facts, in regards to like this book. This book was published back in 2004. I immediately bought it. I saw the title. It's like, oh my god, the Romanov Prophecy. I love all things the Romanovs. So I read this book back in 2004, and I've reread it a lot, you guys. It's a little embarrassing how many times I've reread this book. But yeah, it kind of reached a point that, because I started like a booktube, obviously, and I haven't reread things. So yeah, when I got around to rereading this book finally, it did hit me very strongly. Though I still enjoyed my reread, I still love this book. The thing is, I definitely noticed things about it that I didn't, really pay attention to or recognize or realize, the last time I read it. So that's kind of a lot of what I'm going to be going over in this particular video, is just some things that I have become aware of, and like some problematic things about this book now, and the fact that this book is dated, technically. So yeah, like I said, since this is a book about the Romanovs and their execution, and this whole speculation, hey, are there Romanov survivors out there? Because like I just explained in the synopsis of this book, we're following an American lawyer named Miles Lord. Russia, there's been the fall of communism, and for whatever reason, the Russian people have been like, hey, communism's gone, let's vote back in, the czars, let's have a czar again, let's have a monarchy. So that's why Miles Lord, like I said, he's an American, he's with his business partner, and they are there to pretty much, represent Western interest and whatnot, and yet it's up to Miles to kind of figure out stuff, like the candidates, each candidate who is there, who says they are heirs of the Romanov dynasty. It's kind of up to Miles to, find out, the truth about each of these candidates, if they are legit, if there's anything unsavory in their background that would hinder them from becoming a new czar or whatever. But yeah, through a series of events, he comes to realize, wait a minute, I think there is a real potential heir out there, like a direct survivor of Tsar Nicholas II, that one or two of his children are alive. So that's kind of where you are at with this book. So, like I said, I'm going to go over some historical, like, fact. Like, this is for real, you know. I'm going to go over some really brief historical fact and then kind of start relating it into kind of my thoughts about this book. I think that would be a nice little kind of way to segue into my feelings. You know, like, what is now dated about this book and what's now problematic about this book. Okay, so yeah, number one. The Romanovs, they were executed in 1918. Their bodies were not discovered until 1979, but the gravesite was not excavated until 1991. That's just horrible, you guys. At this point, it was believed 2 bodies were missing. Alexei, Tsar Nicholas II's youngest son, who would have been the next Tsar after Nicholas II, and then Marie or Anastasia, which would have been Tsar Nicholas II's, his 2 youngest daughters. So one of the girls, they're missing. Alexei, his son, and one of his daughters is missing. So of course, because of the 2 missing bodies, this spawned a host of theories and conspiracies of survivors and pretenders. I think one of the most famous pretenders is Anna Anderson. So then moving on. Steve Berry, the author of this book is published in 2004. So then we move on to 2007. In 2007, another grave is discovered and 2 bodies believed to be a young boy and a girl are found in this new grave. So it's not until sometime like between 2008 and 2009, once DNA testing is done and final thoughts are published, that scientists they're confident that the remains of these 2 bodies, that they believe this is Alexei and Marie Romanov, the 2 supposed missing bodies. So of course, if you are a fan of Romanov historical fiction, you know, because a lot of Romanov historical fiction loves to play with the idea of survivors, because, you know, prior to the whole family kind of being found and, you know, the 2 missing bodies being found, there was always that speculation that somebody survived, that there's someone running around out there who is technically, you know, Tsar of Russia or whatever, or Tsarina, I guess, if one of the girls lived. Romanov historical fiction has always played with that idea. So now, like I said, now that I've kind of gone over some of the historic fact, I guess, this book is very, very incredibly dated now, and it's kind of a shame while I was reading this. I think the best approach with this book, if you were to read this book, I think the best approach you would have to read this book as alternative history at this point, if that makes sense. This book can't, you know, it can't really simply just be read as like a mystery thriller anymore. It definitely has to be more of a mystery thriller alternative history now. So, like I said, I have reread this book numerous times. I just really love it. It's just a really thoroughly entertaining book. That's really all this book is. It's just wildly entertaining. It is dated at this point. It is kind of silly and absurd, just some of the things happening. But like I said, it's just purely entertaining. It has a really great pace. The story moves along. The characters are really great. Yeah, the villains in this are definitely cliche and one-dimensional, but when you get books like this, that's kind of what you expect. So yeah, I'm going to kind of go a little bit more into detail with some things that might be a little problematic about this book. Because though I love and enjoy this book, this is definitely not the book for everybody. I can tell you that. This book, you're either going to love it or hate it. So I'm definitely going to kind of get into some of those issues, like things that didn't particularly bother me, but what I think might bother another reader. So, like I already mentioned, the big thing about this book is the fact that it is dated now. Because of everything that we have discovered about the Romanovs, the entire family has been found at this point now. This book is dated. It's no longer like speculative fiction. It is, you know, alternative history at this point, as I mentioned. So yeah, if you're a stickler for history, this is definitely not the book for you, because this book definitely does play around with stuff. The second thing about this book, if you do not like books by someone like Dan Brown, this is definitely not the book for you either. I personally love Dan Brown. I love Angels and Demons and the Da Vinci Code. You know, I love all of those books. That's just it. They're entertaining. You're not really supposed to take them seriously, you know. They're just meant to be entertaining and fun, you know, a thrill ride. And that's what this book is. It's definitely in a very similar vein to something like Dan Brown. It's the type of book, you know, where your protagonists are like globe-trotting, essentially. They're going on a treasure hunt. They're looking for something. They're coming across riddles that they have to solve, you know, riddles that lead them to a clue and then to a next clue, you know, until they get to their end goal. That's essentially what this book is, and it's something like what you would see in Dan Brown, you know, where your main character in those books, Robert Langdon, you know, he unravels a riddle. It takes him down, you know, just this to this to this to this until he reaches the end goal, you know, and he has to use his cleverness and intelligence to get him there. So that's kind of the same with this book. Your character, Miles Lord, and his leading lady, if you will, Aquilina, you know, they're working on this whole thing together, you know, to figure out, okay, is there for real a Romanov heir? And if so, we have to unravel each of these clues and riddles to find out where they would even be staying at this point. So if you like Dan Brown, if you like a book that is just purely entertaining and fun and fast-paced, you know, a book that's not really meant to be taken seriously, you know, I think this will be the type of thing that will appeal to you. The third thing about this book that I guess might be a little problematic, Steve Berry is American, the writer. He is American. He's not Russian. So upon my reread, I do feel like there were elements of this book that might almost be a little insensitive, you know, insensitive to just Russian culture, Russian people, because he's writing this book from an American point of view, you know, someone who doesn't entirely understand, you know, Russian culture, Russian people, you know. So I think there might be a few elements of this that might almost seem a little insensitive, or if not insensitive, I guess just oversimplified. I think that's the big thing about this book, because it's tackling a big, huge issue. You know, what if the Russian people were like, hey, let's vote back in the monarchy? The way things are kind of going about, it's very oversimplified. You know, it's very, very oversimplified. Whereas I think, like, if this were to really happen in real life, there would be a lot more depth and nuance to it, you know what I mean? But that's kind of not the point of the book, you know. I mean, the book, once again, it's a speculative thing of finding a Romanov heir, you know. And yes, Steve Berry, I mean, he is spending a lot of time trying to get into the headspace of, like, what the Russian people would be like, and why would they vote back in the monarchy, you know? Why exactly, what would inspire them to want that again, you know? So, I mean, he does spend time doing that, but yeah, sometimes it's not the entire point of the book. It is just more of a thing of, you know, finding the missing heir and if they exist or not, you know? Because seriously, while I was reading this book, because when I first read this book, I never thought about it. It wasn't until my recent reread of it here this year that I did. I was thinking to myself, and, you know, like, the Russian people are like, hey, let's bring back the czars. I mean, that's like France. If France all of a sudden was like, hey, remember when we beheaded our king? Let's bring back the monarchy, you guys, yay! France wouldn't do such a thing, you know. So yeah, the whole purpose of this book, when you think about like France has like a similar sort of thing, you know. They got rid of their monarchy. Would France ever realistically be like, hey, let's bring back the monarchy? I don't think so. So it's kind of the same with how Steve Barry has Russia in this book, I don't think Russia would ever be like, hey, let's bring back the Tsars. I don't think that would ever realistically happen. The fourth thing about this book, like I said, Steve Barry is American. Steve Barry is also a white man. And what I have failed to mention so far in this review is that our lead character, Miles Lord, he is a black man. So as I've already mentioned a couple times in this review, this book was written back in 2004. It's been over a decade. And our conversation about people of color since 2004, since this book was published, our conversation about people of color has dramatically shifted and changed. So there were some occasions during my reread that it was just strange because I did all of a sudden feel a little weird, and I felt like, I don't know if Steve Barry perhaps should have maybe phrased something that way, or maybe had Miles Lord think a certain way, because like I said, Steve Barry is a white man, Miles Lord as a character is a black character, and I feel like it's like Steve Barry is having Miles Lord say things like what Steve Barry himself would say, but it's like I don't think realistically the character of Miles Lord would have or even share the same opinions that Steve Barry perhaps is kind of having, if that makes sense. Does that make sense? So I do feel like there were a few moments in here that were a little awkward, perhaps a little problematic. Like, I just don't think Miles Lord would really have that opinion. He wouldn't really think that way. Like, that's more of like Steve Barry's opinion and how he thinks of the world, you know, if that makes sense. I'm not sure how to kind of phrase what I'm trying to say. So there were a few little strange instances that if this book was written now and Miles Lord was like the protagonist of this book, he would be a much different character, I feel like, and he would have different thoughts and opinions and feelings about like the states of the world, you know. But despite some of the awkwardness and strangeness upon my reread, despite that, Miles Lord, he's still a great character though. I love him as your primary protagonist in this book. He is a very strong person of color. He's very clever. He's very intelligent. He speaks Russian fluently. He loves Russian culture. He's fascinated by it. He genuinely is like going on this mission to find a Romanov heir because he really believes in it, you know. He has a great relationship with Akalina, who is the circus performer. He's just a really great character in general. I really loved him. He's like your standard protagonist in any type of book like this. You know, I mean, he's kind of just like Robert Langdon. If you, like I said, if you like the Dan Brown books and you like the character of Robert Langdon, Miles Lord is kind of similar to that. You know, he's kind of the equivalent of that. You know, very clever and intelligent. You know, and he's able to kind of read through these clues and riddles and, you know, really think about, you know, like, okay, this is what this means. And I love that about his character. And the fact that Miles is black is actually it's actually a very integral part of this book. I'm not going to say why, because that is kind of part of the plot. Why exactly? It's kind of part of a riddle that Rasputin set up and whatnot. I won't kind of go more into that, but yeah, the fact that Miles is black is actually kind of really integral and pivotal to certain plot points in the book. Overall, despite, you know, I had this reread, I did discover some things that I think in hindsight now are a little bit problematic, a little worrisome, I guess, but still, I loved this reread. Like I said, this book is just pure entertainment for me. I don't take it seriously. It's very quick, has a great pace, has great characters. It does have some cliche villains in there, as I mentioned earlier, but it is, the whole novel, it's about history, you know, it's about history, it's about culture, it's about identity, it's about the rewriting of history. It's also about the pride that someone has in their country, but also, you know, you can have pride in your country, but also acknowledge, hey, there's some bad things about my country and my history as well. And then on top of that, you know, acknowledging the mistakes of history, but yeah, also kind of with the hope of a greater, better future as well. And yeah, the book is, like I said, the book can be cliche in places. It's definitely very oversimplified, but still very, very thoroughly engaging and entertaining, I think. And yeah, if you love all things Romanov, I think this is definitely the book for you. Like I said, even though it's dated now, it is terribly dated, but you know, we all still love to speculate, hey, what if someone survived? Even though they didn't. So you guys, that is it for my thoughts and feelings on my reread of the Romanov Prophecy. I love this reread. It was really great. So in the comments below, have you guys read the Romanov Prophecy? Do you plan on reading it at all? I don't know if my review particularly made anyone want to read this book, because I feel like it's really just a book that I like. I don't know if others really particularly like this book. But yeah, I love the book. So that's it for this video. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you like this video, you may like these other videos. Bye guys.